Yo, what's going on YouTube? Firefist Chris here, and today I'm bringing you guys an updated deck profile, and this time it's on Kinemon. This is the leader I've been running the most in OP-02, as well as what I've been vibing with the most and having the most success with. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get out much content within this past week. I'm going to try to go ahead and fix an issue I was having with doing screen recordings on my laptop, so to get you guys some dual videos on the online simulator. So please stay tuned for that, and like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. But I'm going to go into a more in-depth deck profile for Kinemon, as this is the deck. I feel like it's a deck that's going to be really hard to kind of master in this type of format, especially with so many good decks out there right now. So obviously, if you don't know already, you have Kinemon, the leader. So activate main once per turn. If you have one or less characters, the next time you play a land of Wano type character with the cost of 3 or more from your hand, then the cost will be reduced by 1. So obviously this allows you for very early game tempo moves where you can go ahead and summon on your turn 1, but you'll be going second. You could summon Okiku into the 5-drop Yamato the following turn, or the 4-drop for 3 Dawn, and still have 1 Dawn remaining. There's just a lot with this deck that you can do just with this leader's ability. I did make a couple changes just based off playtesting that I was doing online. So I'll go ahead and just get right into the deck profile and just kind of explain why I made the changes that I did. All in all, list is kind of standard, but I did make a couple interesting takes. So obviously you run 4 Momos. It's the most important searcher in the deck. Obviously, it just allows you to grab anything that you need for your engine to be able to clear games, rest characters, even get 2K counters to your hand. It's the most versatile searcher in your deck. Obviously, you have to run 4 of it. Card that actually cut down from my last deck profile. I'm only running 2 Tokis now. And the thought process behind this, I swept it out with other blockers in here. But Toki is very situational. I do like it because some parts, a late game, if you just need to get a cheap blocker out there, if you have an established board and you need to protect your Odin or 7-drop Kid, or whatever you have on field, getting a Momo, searching this out, and having this out for 1 Dawn, if you have a Yamato on the field, is really useful late game. But all in all, I feel like a lot of times I was just using it for a 1K counter. And there's just better cards that you probably will want to run over Toki. So it's only running 2 for right now. Next is Bonnie. I'm running 4 Bonnie still. I was trying to play test to try out 3 of them, or even cut the Bonnies. I've tried a lot of different builds with this deck, but I found that Bonnie is helpful because this deck relies on trying to get 2K counters since it doesn't run that many of them. Almost like half the deck doesn't have counters. If not exactly half, 25 cards doesn't have counters. So this is just useful for grabbing Apus as well as Beige as your blocker to be able to defend you late game as well. I did cut down on Beige. I'm only running 3 Beige. I kind of cut this just because it doesn't have counter power in your hand. Obviously, it's a 1-drop blocker. I was just trying to get more away from kind of a similar build, and this is build I've been finding success for more. So we'll go ahead. Next, we have 4 Apu. It's a 2K counter. It's searchable by Bonnie. I'm running 4 of the Killer. Killer is really good, especially just being able to get resources from them. And it's a 1K counter. So this card is, I actually bumped this one up back to 4. I did try out with different ratios for this card. Killer is just really useful. You're probably going to always have like kind of a filled board to be able to get the ability off. Or if not, it kind of makes your opponent waste resources trying to get rid of it, which obviously you don't mind them doing. And then for the next card, obviously you got to run. This is your best turn 1 play if you're going second, and that's Okiku. So Okiku obviously is not much to be said. It's a card that you kind of want a hard mulligan for if you won the die roll and you're going second, kind of against every matchup. Summoning this is kind of a problem for a lot of matchups to get rid of, especially this kind of single-handedly, at least for your turn 1 play, beats the Zoro matchup, since that's such a strong deck for this format. Just dropping this down, they can't jet pistol it on their next turn since they would only have 3 Dawn. So it's kind of guarantees whatever they're summoning is getting off the board that next turn. And it makes them do different plays to try to get rid of it as well. Next, for Izos, obviously a great card. The rest ability comes in pretty often, as well as it's a 2K counter. So that's also pretty good as well. Running only four of him. And then running 3 Ryzos. I was running previously 4 copies of Ryzo. Ryzo is great if you don't see Okiku and you mulligan happen to get Ryzo. This turn 2 is really good, especially if you have a Momo or Bonnie in hand. Just because if you can summon this on 2 and then your next turn use Bonnie or Momo's effect, grab a card, and then just attack with this, now you're getting 2 resources kind of off, just 2 cards on field, and it kind of keeps your hand balanced as well. Obviously, Ryzo is just a great card. I was thinking about running 4 just for the consistency, but all in all, the deck space is kind of tight with some of the cards I run. Next is for Yamato. Behind Odin, this is probably the best card in the deck. This can rest, honestly, anything. 6 or less is such a high number for a cost of character. And then the fact, obviously, that it's treated as Odin makes the Toki relevant as well. It's not much to say. Yamato turn 2 is great as well. So we'll move on to the 5 drops. I'm running 1 X-Drake. I've seen a lot in the OCG. People run a lot more copies of this card, as well as over here. They run probably like 1 or 2. This card's really good against the green mirror match. Being able to attack into something, then protecting it, dropping this and popping like Kiku or Ryzo or something important that you need to get rid of and they have too many blockers. It's really good in those matchups. And some matchups it doesn't become relevant at all and you're kind of just sending this for a 1K counter, depending on when you actually see this card. Another one is a change that I actually just recently made, and I put in 2 of the blocker laws. So in playtesting, I didn't want to run these initially since they don't have any counter value. However, I found a lot of times, at least in the mid game, when you have certain things rested, such as Momo or Bonnie or Ryzo, or it could be anything where you can attack, use the effect, and then bounce it out, and then drop either Ryzo or Kiku. You can drop down a blocker with him as well. It becomes really good as well in the late game to bounce back Izos to your hand to keep that 2K counter in your hand and drop something else without any counter value, like a Beige that's a blocker that's in your hand. So it's just really good that this effect be able to bounce stuff in your hand. It's really good for recycling certain effects like Yamato and Izo that rest cards on the field and then dropping down an Okiku. Another change that I went ahead and made, I'm running 2 of the 5 drop Yamatos. I was playing initially, I tried out the build playing 4 of them. You want to see this card, but you don't want to see this card all the time. If you don't really see it past that turn 2 play, it's kind of good against the green matchup when you guys are kind of just walling up and nobody's really attacking first. This can really threaten life and force them to use blockers or force them to do something. So for Yamato, I think that this card is really strong against Zoro if you're able to get the Okiku on that turn 1 and then drop this. A lot of times they don't run blockers, so it guarantees them to banish. It doesn't let them see any resources. And obviously it's the double attack banish. I mean, what more can you say? And it also has a counter, which at the very worst you can always send and be able to counter out. Next, I am running 2 of the Captain Kids. It's a great card against a lot of matchups late game as well. Being able to attack and then keep that constant pressure and then setting it back to active to be able to block, as well as combination with this and Waterfall is really good. Being able to block Waterfall, bring it back up and be able to block something else is kind of ridiculous, honestly, against a lot of matchups. And really, this is only bad against Blue, which Blue is not the most representative deck that we have out right now with the Vonkov. It's it's seeing play, but not as much play as I would say like Smoker, Zoro, Whitebeard, those decks. So this is still hard to get rid of for a lot of decks. For Black, probably a little bit easier. But if you drop this against Zoro, it's kind of just game over, honestly. Then for the last of the characters, I am running for Kazuki Odin. It's important you see this card. Simply, you summon this on your turn 7 play if you have 1 or less with the Kinemon's ability. and you can get this out for 7. This can attack, restand itself, and then on KO bring something that's 3 or less, which doesn't always have to be Okiku. Sometimes I'll bring out the Raizo with this ability to be able to get additional resources on my next turn if I'm not trying to rest anything, or if I know I have another rester in my hand like a Yamato or a Izo. So Odin, honestly, it's your win condition for this deck. You kind of get this out, especially if you can get multiple out. This helps you win almost every matchup, especially against Whitebeard. Whitebeard late game, they can't really do anything about this. Like they would either have to block, waste one of their blockers, or counter out with high attacking, with radical beams or guard points or multiple, just because it attacks for a lot. And that's it for the characters. And I only run 3 events. I've been changing the ratios around. I was running previously 2 Pumpkin Sims. I'm only running the 1. The trigger effect is just really, really good in a lot of matchups. But you really don't want to leave a lot of active Dawn with this deck. You kind of use a lot of it for your Dawn ability to be able to attack and kind of play more wide with this deck. And I just found that the 2 of the Paradise Waterfall were so much better for this deck, being able to restand pieces like Okiku, your Momos, your 7-drop. You can go ahead and be able to block with the Law and then restand him as well. There's just a lot of combability with this deck that you can use with Paradise Waterfall. And then the trigger effect is pretty good as well against Zoro if you get it off life. So all in all, that was the deck profile for Kinemon. I would say that Zoro still a matchup that's, it's not an auto win, but if you see the right cards on curve, it kind of feels like an auto win. A lot of times you can just clear their resources, get them close to range, and then they can't really deal with Odin. Even if they pop it, then you're getting Okiku out and then clearing their board out with that, and they have to use too many resources to try to get rid of Odin. And in general, I think red, it's a good matchup for you. Blue might be a little bit difficult just because, like I said, they can kind of punish you by putting the blocker to your hand using the Luffy's ability. And if they don't have the Luffy, then they can also go ahead and be able to use the Brick Fisk if they're running that card and bounce your blockers back to your hand. So, I mean, there is a lot of things that deck does against your deck that could be punishing. Against black, you kind of want to play this deck a little bit differently. You want to play more aggro instead of control the board. Since they can pop stuff and you don't want them to ramp up once they get the Aokiji, it's kind of hard to keep anything on board, especially against Z. So what I would suggest in those matchups is being able to get out multiple of like Yamatos, the Raizos, even Izos, anything that can attack, and you're just going to attack multiple times to get their counter low. So by the time they get the 10-drop out, their life is too low to be able to even protect their own life. With either Odin, or if you're able to get out a 7-drop Kid, you kind of just want to play that matchup a little bit differently and be more aggressive. And that's where I kind of found success against the black matchup, because usually that's one of your harder matchups if they can get their curve pretty well. And then for the last one is Whitebeard. Honestly, Whitebeard, I think that this is Kinemon's easiest matchup. Obviously, it depends if they're running the Strawbeard version. I think that matchup is a little bit more difficult. But if it's the Moby Dick version, you kind of just run over them because you can rest their stuff. You don't let them have a board ever. Rest everything that they have, and you just do big swings with Odin. And there's not much really they can do. Yeah, they can try to Squard and Vista and Otama to pop the Odin, but then you get something right back out that can rest Marco, and they kind of rely on that sometimes if they don't have enough counters in their hand. So all in all, I think that this is a deck that if you're not sure what to play for OP-02, you should definitely try this out on the online simulator. I'll be taking this to local either Wednesday or Thursday, so I'll probably do a tournament result video for this deck. And that was it. Fire Fist Chris signing out. Peace.